after her fiery speech in 1948 at the NAACP convention in Mobile, highlighting the abuse and harassment of African Americans, Rosa Parks was elected Secretary of the State of Alabama's NAACP and given the responsibility to document even more cases similar to Recy Taylor's, often cases of people whose names were never remembered, though still often haunting Rosa Parks. Women who had been assaulted and victimized stood up, and they continued the tradition of testimony and truth-telling, a tradition stretching back to slavery, speaking out in the face of great danger and reclaiming their bodies and their humanity, finding the power of voice and the strength of many voices joined together as communities and networks across the nation joined forces to support these women. As the movement grew and broadened, one pamphlet stated, "When we say equal justice for Recy Taylor, we are also saying equal hope, equal joy, equal dignity for every woman, child, and man the wide world over. Is that too much to ask? This is what we are fighting for." A people discovered the power to mobilize local folk, learning the power of boycotting local businesses and rallying nationwide support that even if it did not succeed in the short term in securing justice for Recy Taylor, it became a large, well-organized group of activists shining the light on the ruthless heart of the country's racial system. This eclectic organization were the very people who lifted Martin Luther King Jr. to international prominence 10 years later, after their leading organizer, Rosa Parks, was arrested on a Montgomery bus. Black men and women were continuously snubbed, bullied, and brutalized on Montgomery buses. Women who had to travel to their low-paying domestic jobs were particularly vulnerable with no real option. Women began to organize against the bus drivers, demanding to be treated like ladies. The organized movement that had arisen in 1944 and was still holding strong galvanized support around these women, and some began to defy the discriminatory bus laws and practices, often at huge personal cost. Then on December 1st, 1955, for Rosa Parks, firmly grounded in her identity as a radical activist, after years of watching injustice, after years being at the very center of Montgomery's Black freedom struggle, for Rosa Parks, a new moment came, a new opportunity presented itself. As she sat in the middle section of the bus designated for neither blacks nor whites, and the driver demanded she move, Rosa Parks stayed put. Immediately, she recognized James F. Blake, the driver who mistreated her in 1943, and turning to look out the window, Rosa ignored Blake. Infuriated, Blake left the bus to call the police. Rosa, fully aware of the danger she faced, knowing fear, yet remaining calm, perhaps emboldened by the spirit of her grandfather rocking night after night, cradling his double-barreled shotgun, recalling her training for labor and civil rights activists, Rosa sat and waited to be arrested or worse. The arrest of Rosa Parks was just what the movement needed at this moment in time. NAACP leaders gleefully declared, "They've arrested the wrong woman." The Women's Political Council immediately sprang into action, organizing the bus boycott for the following morning, December 5th. Within hours, nearly every black man, woman, and child knew the plan and were passing the news along. Despite her husband's pleas, Rosa Parks would not be stopped, believing the benefits of legal battle outweighed the personal risk. And this is important, and this is what we may not know. From that moment on, Rosa Parks' history as an activist and a defiant woman for justice disappeared from public view. She became the model of middle-class ideals, of godliness, a 1950s wife with family responsibilities, a woman of proper conduct and demeanor, somebody around whom all blacks in Montgomery could rally, humble enough to be claimed by common folk, dignified enough in manner, speech, and dress to command the respect of the leading classes, a respectable, very saintly woman. As this politically savvy, wise activist took on her new role as a symbol of virtuous black womanhood, even the most reluctant of middle-class ministers in middle-class churches rallied to her defense. And on Sunday morning from their pulpits decried the arrest of Rosa Parks, promoted the Monday bus boycott, and called for an assembly afterwards for their people to receive further instruction. Even though it was the new young pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who became the face of the Montgomery bus boycott, Rosa Parks had been laying the groundwork, setting the stage for over 10 years, while Martin Luther King Jr. was still a high school student in Atlanta. This wise as serpents, innocent as doves woman who organized an amazing activist network willingly took on the next role necessary in the fight for justice, knowing exactly what she had to do. Rosa Parks walked into the courtroom in a straight, long-sleeved black dress with white collar and cuffs, a small velvet hat with pearls across the top, and a charcoal gray coat, carrying a black purse and wearing her white gloves. Her conservative, Puritan-like clothing masked her apparent quiet demeanor, masked Rosa Parks' steely determination not only to confront injustice, but to dismantle the very fabric of white supremacy itself. Now, why should we even care? Why even bother to talk about Black History Month? Why celebrate Black History Month? Because so-called race relations in this country, especially between so-called whites and so-called blacks, have defined and continue to define this country. Because history unexamined and superficially understood can be history repeated, maybe differently, but repeated nonetheless. Because the past unused to teach us something new, to help us move forward, is opportunity lost and movement backward. Because there is still so much we do not know, and what we think we know may be wrong. Because we still haven't gotten it right, living in a diverse world with the differences and exciting possibilities God's created diversity offers to us. Because without knowledge and understanding, courage and truth, a congregation of diverse members will never become an intercultural community of faith. And because God really doesn't care about a lot of the things we do trying to prove our goodness, but requires of us to do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly with our God. Why is Black history and much other history we seldom hear about important? Why do historical fact and historical perspective, mostly left out of the textbooks, even matter? Because justice still does not roll down like waters, nor righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Amen.